this video we're going to look at project influences. The things that influence your planning and your execution of the project. Now projects don't just sit there in isolation. They influenced by things outside of the project. So there's the society that you're working in, the environment that you're working in, the physical conditions, the legal environment, the political environment, the cultural environment. They can affect your project success. So it's not a matter of just planning the project and it's sitting there in isolation and you're quite happy. It's actually considering those environmental factors. So these are things that can constrain you from doing what you want to do. So you might think, oh, this is great. I'm going to finish my project really early. I'm going to have 3 shifts and they're going to work 24 hours a day, three shifts of 8. But you're in the middle of a community and it's unacceptable for you to be working with big machines overnight because it produces too much noise. So there is a constraint. You can only work in New Zealand between the hours of 7 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock at night. You can't work beyond that. So there's a constraint. It means you can't work 24 hours a day as you'd like to finish the project early. It means that you're constrained by that. And so there are a lot of those legal restraints too. There's health and safety. If you're not morally bound by health and safety, there's legal avenues as well. So if you're thinking, oh, we're just going to sort of go along and if a few guys get killed, that's okay. Well, morally that's totally wrong. But also legally that's wrong as well. So no, you can't do that even if you wanted to. If you wanted to do it, you shouldn't be in engineering. So we want to do everything safely, and first of all that's our moral code, but secondly it's the legal code as well. So that constrains you from doing dangerous things, which is great. Not under the control of the team. You just have to work with it. So it's like a ship at sea. The ship wants to get from point A to point B, but there's storms and there's heavy seas and all sorts of things that it has to deal with. So it's never plain sailing. So the different sources of enterprise environmental factors, that's what they're called. Because PMBOK is written by project managers, they like to use big complicated words, EEFs, whatever it is. It just basically means the things that are going to constrain you. So the sources can be within your organization, within the project organization. So that might be within your own organization if you're a consultant, within your consultancy, or if you're a contractor, within your construction company. And that might be your culture. So it might be that you've got a culture of just working from Mondays through to Fridays. You don't work on Saturdays. So that constrains the days you can actually work. Other places have a culture of we just work when we can. So it might be from Monday to Saturday or something like that. It might be the culture of the country you work in. So some countries you don't work on certain days because they're a holy day. So that's an external factor, but it might be also within internal. The people that work in your company have this religious belief that they don't work on a certain day, for example. There's the structure of the company, who does what. So there are rules, they help you, but they can also get in the way as well. Available resources. So the resources within your company, you might think, I'm going to do this design and I'm going to have a team of 20 CAD people just sort of cranking out the drawings, but it turns out that you can only get 2 or 3. Okay, so that's a constraint. You'd like to sort of be able to crank out the design much faster, but you are constrained by the resources available within your company. And that could be financial resources too. It might be that you're thinking, oh, I'm going to use this really expensive computer system to manage my project, but the company says, well, no, we can't, we don't have the money to do it, we're not going to provide you that computer system. And rules and systems within the company, the way the company does things, who they communicate with. So I used to work for an engineering company, and when we had surveying work to do, we had to procure it because we didn't have any surveyors. We went to another company, a survey company. We had a sort of a partnership with them, but they weren't part of the same company. And likewise, if they had an engineering work, they'd come to us. So there was an agreement there. So we didn't have the option of going and hiring another surveyor because we already had that relationship, which was good for us. Another type of enterprise environmental factor is the external, outside of the organization. And the big one for civil engineering projects is the location, where you are, what's the weather like, what are the soils like, how far away from the roads are you, all those sort of things. So those that are location related things. There's also the economy, the marketplace. So you're working in a particular area, you want half a dozen carpenters to help build a house, but the economy is such that everyone's building houses all at the same time and there's not many carpenters available on the market. Or you want to buy a whole lot of materials and the economy is such that those materials are really cheap, in which case it's good for you, or really expensive. So, and the economy goes up and down. And so sometimes there are lots of resources available to you, sometimes there's very few, sometimes things are very expensive, sometimes things are not so expensive. So that's that market conditions I was talking about there. Government and industry standards. So as engineers we have a lot of standards. If you're building a road for New Zealand Transport Agency, they have a series of standards. And these standards tell you how to build the road. They say that you shall use this type of aggregate for the base course. If you're designing, they even tell you how to design it. They say when you're designing it, you use the Austroads manual, this thing here. So you have to design to their standards if they're the client. Uh, Councils have their own codes of practice that tell you how you're supposed to design a pipeline or how you're supposed to design a road, all those sort of things. So they are constraints on what you can do as a designer and as a constructor. And there's also the political climate. If you're working for a council or a government department, this one comes into it. Especially councils, you get the local councillor. You know, you're doing a council job and the local councillors are objecting to it, or the people are objecting to it, or you're making a bit of noise and people are ringing up the councillor, and all of a sudden the councillor turns up on your site and tells you they're unhappy about things. So the political climate is also sort of quite influential. So enterprise environmental factors. Enterprise is the thing you're doing. The enterprise, the project you're doing. The environmental is the environment that the project is in. So that's the way to remember that. I don't know why they had to make it so complicated, but they did. So the next thing to look at is organisational process assets. So once again, they used a big complicated word, OPA, whatever it is. So these are the plans, procedures, guidelines, knowledge bases. These are the things that help you to plan and execute your project. Lessons the work required. So you're doing a project and it's probably been done before. If you're building a road or designing a road, someone's probably designed one before. So you'd be a fool to actually start from scratch and come up with your own specifications, for example, or your own way of doing the road, because someone's already done it before. And so that's what those organisational process assets are all about. It's these things that'll help you to do it within your organisation. So the first ones are the processes and procedures. So these are guidelines and templates. So these are all things within your organisation. So most organisations, most consultancies have a whole series of specifications. They might have a design guidelines which sort of tell you how to do the design, what the processes you should undertake, what quality checks you should be doing, all those sort of things there. So it's all set out. In templates, it might just be a tick thing. Have you done the calculations? Tick. Have they been checked by a senior engineer? Tick. So the templates also help you to step through those processes required to achieve what you're supposed to achieve with the project. And the standard procedures, if you're working in a consultancy or a construction firm, you've all worked together before, you all know who does what, and so there's standardized roles, there's standardized ways of doing things, and you just follow along with those rather than try to reinvent the wheel. Authorization, if you need money or you need resources, there's usually things like that. So for example, when I was a junior engineer, they used to give me an order book, and when I had to buy stuff, I'd go along and I'd fill in an order, and that would, instead of paying money, I'd actually give them an order and then they'd invoice us. So that was an authorization procedure which enabled me to procure materials. And communication channels, who talks to. So you'll have a boss and you know who you're communicating with. he will have his boss that he communicates with. So you don't have to come up with a new communication matrix or anything like that, or organizational procedures. You just have to go with what's there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Also within your organization, there's a whole big body of knowledge. People have done this before, even if you haven't. So there's company procedures, policies, project documents. So if you're doing a project, you've never done it before, the best thing to do is to go dig up the last time the company did that project, dig up the files, find out what the program was, find out how long things actually did take. So there's that information there. There's also, you've probably got a pretty good idea of, well, it took us this long to dig a hole on the previous project. Well, in my planning, I'm going to allow the same time for my project. So you don't have to reinvent it. You don't have to go out and do big studies. It took us 2 days to dig a 200 cubic meter hole. Last time, it's probably going to take us about the same for this one. So you've got the productivity rates and previous experience. So even if you haven't done it before, you can talk to one of the other project managers or the supervisors. How did it go? What happened? Oh, you know, we used this excavator here and it didn't quite work. It would have been better if we'd used a bigger excavator, or if we'd used a loader or something to do that job there. So the experience within the company, the people that have done it before, made mistakes, learnt lessons, and you'd be a fool to repeat the mistake. So you're tapping into that previous knowledge and you are using that to plan your project. And that's the way companies get better and better and better. So you need to consider those two things. You need to consider the enterprise environmental factors and the organizational procedural assets when you're doing your planning. And you'll see in the following videos when we're talking about planning, these things will come up quite a bit.